Hey guys, it's Josh from Grappling, and today we're going to talk about Laamb, also known as Senegalese wrestling. If you see me doing tics, I got Tourette syndrome, so that's why. Now, wrestling has been around for many centuries. It originated in Greece, that we know, as well as in other countries, and it could be spread out to India, Japan, Africa, China, Middle East, etc. But despite knowing so little about its origins, the origin of wrestling that is, and how it's spread across continents, one thing's for sure is that it's probably the most practiced form of grappling out there. Now, such a type of wrestling is Senegalese wrestling, which is known as Lamb in the language of Wolof. It's one of the oldest sports in existence. In this fight, the onlookers watch in anticipation, sorry, I always can never pronounce that one, as two burly men battle it out. The stakes are generally high, and the victory will be rewarded in cash prizes for those who succeed. The sport is more prevalent in comparison to football in Senegal and possibly in Gambia. And participants can earn over $100,000 at a serious match, or even livestock if they win a match. And this is very important to people living in Africa. Lamb is an opportunity that anyone can achieve, being plucked from obscurity and put onto a platform where they can become nationally recognized heroes. The sport is inviting, and the best part is that anyone can enter the competition, despite age and gender. Basically, anyone with a strong heart and drive is always invited to wrestle at these things. The history and tradition of Senegalese wrestling is deeply rooted into the ancient times of Senegal. The ancient art of this wrestling is a type of folk sport traditionally performed by serers and now widely practiced through Senegal. This form allows blows with hands, which is strikes with hands, which makes it unique among West African traditions that utilize physical contact for competition or training purposes. Um, Now, what are the origins of Senegalese wrestling? There are many theories on how Senegalese wrestling originated, okay? But most scholars agree that it has been practiced for centuries by the Serer people in villages in Senegal. It is typically a very entertaining game or match and may be seen as a significant contribution to African culture overall. Some historians believe that wrestling was created during the time of conflict between different tribes in Senegal. Others believe it may have come from ritual ceremonies where opponents would wrestle for kingship. Whatever the reason behind its creation, it has become one of Africa's most popular sports. Now, Senegalese wrestling, or lutte traditionnelle, as it is known locally, has its roots in Senegal and Gambia. It was initially practiced as a way to prepare young boys for war, which is very common in a lot of folk style wrestlings around the world, and as such, was mastered by those who had the best fighting skills within the art. Now, being strong also served to protect members of the community from wild animals, and as such, its practice created a unique culture and tradition within these regions. Now, Senegalese wrestling is often considered to be a metaphor for life, with participants learning important life lessons as how to handle defeat and how to fight in difficult situations. Wrestling is still practiced by men in some rural villages, but the rules are different than the ones used nationally. They are definitely more brutal, with fights lasting until one of the competitors submits or dies. Something that is thankfully prohibited nowadays within the national competitions. Although I'm sure some of you guys would like to see that. But for most of us, we don't. Today, Senegalese wrestling is still popular and considered an essential part of the country's culture. Competitions take place throughout the year and attract participants from all over Africa and now even the world. The most prestigious event is the Festival International de Lutte Traditionnelle in Dakar, which is hosted by the president of Senegal himself. Wrestlers come from all over the world to compete, and the event is nationally televised, adding to its prestige. Now, let's talk about the rules of Senegalese wrestling. On the surface, Lamb is a simple game of conquest. It features two competitors who attempt to flip each other over onto their backs using what looks like Greco Roman wrestling techniques. Uh, However, there are two variations on this theme. One where fighters cannot use any hands, uh, so no striking, which is generally in local village fights, and another which allows jabs and punches during the fights. The second variation is usually only used for large stadium matches. Basically, one variation allows striking, and will focus more on knocking out the opponent, whereas the second version does not allow striking and has much more of a wrestling emphasis with high amplitude throws and emphasis on pinning an opponent's back onto the ground. Out of the two, Senegalese wrestling with punching allowed is definitely the more popular one to watch. Senegalese wrestling matches take part in a ring that is surrounded by a circle of sandbags. Senegalese wrestlers have to fight bare knuckle, and matches generally last 2 rounds of 10 minutes. Matches are generally fought on the weekend, which are Saturday and Sunday there. Uh, Matches generally take place in a stadium. Now, Demba Diop Stadium, Stade Demba Diop in Dakar, is very commonplace for matches to take place. The biggest Senegalese wrestling matches and competitions generally take place in Leopold Sédar Senghor Stadium in Dakar, which can hold up to 60,000 screaming fans. Must be great energy. A match can be won by a few methods. If you knock out your opponent, if the opponent's butt cheeks, back, or head hit the ground or out of the wrestling circle, or if both opponents' knees and hands touch the ground at the same time. Punches to the face and body are fully allowed. Throwing opponent is fully allowed. Punches from the clinch and on the ground are fully allowed. The combination of spiritual pre fight rituals is what sets Laamb apart from other fighting organizations. Wrestlers have rigorous physical training regimen that can be 4 months or more longer to their fights. But besides that, they also prepare themselves with spiritually based exercises. It includes rituals as it is believed that a huge part of their battle takes place in the spiritual realm. So, that said, what is the role of mysticism in Senegalese wrestling? Marabouts play a huge role in this as well. In Senegal, marabouts are spiritual guides who step in to provide protection for wrestlers during matches. These Muslim holy men are important members of the Sufi tradition recognized among Senegalese Muslim citizens. While strength and skill are necessary to be a successful fighter, no wrestler would fight without spiritual protection. They go to marabouts before the match, who give them liquids blessed by them for protection against negative spirits. On the day of the match, the wrestlers enter with their coaches, team members, as well as marabouts who provide them gris or grease, as if you read it literally. These are amulets which, with verses from the Quran, inscribed on them and containing ritual objects for protection during these matches. The spiritual guides also pour the blessed liquids over the fighters before the matches. The wrestlers would then walk around during a processional of drums, dances, and baks, which is an oral art performance. The baks would boast about them to instill fear in the opponents with this intimidating sound. Now, how is that traditional sport of Senegalese wrestling that we spoke about now transitioning to modern settings? Okay, so Senegalese wrestling has been around for over centuries, and now it's attracting more attention with each passing generation. It's fought in sand, like many African sports related to the religion. That said, this one is very unique because they incorporate elaborate rituals that are similar to what we see kind of in voodoo. The sport has achieved both commercial success and international popularity in recent years. It has become a favorite pastime of the country's upper class, and it also has attracted viewers from around the world via widespread internet coverage. Thank you, YouTube. However, in order to maintain modern appeal, Senegalese wrestlers have had to make several adjustments. The most famous wrestlers are now celebrities, and the sport itself has grown increasingly commercialized due to this. This has led to some tension between traditionalists who want the sport to remain true to its roots and those who feel that modernization is necessary for its survival. Despite these challenges, Senegalese wrestlers are still going strong. The country's wrestlers have achieved great success in international competitions, and the sport continues to draw large crowds. This demonstrates the resilience of the sport and its importance to the Senegalese people. Today, wrestling is seen as a source of Senegal's pride. It remains a sport of great national value, and the Senegalese people are determined to keep it alive. That said, why is wrestling so popular in Senegal? While football is king in most parts of Africa, in Senegal, wrestling is a sport that takes up the much needed time for entertainment and exercise within the population that lives there. It definitely challenges football for popularity, maybe priority too. Senegalese wrestling provides opportunities to young men who wish they could be famous and financially successful without working hard at anything else all day long. The dream of all young men, for sure. The athletes train for years to get good enough to make money from the sport. They must maintain their bodies so that they look the part and learn how to entertain the crowds. Gris Bordeaux is one of the most successful professional wrestlers in Senegal. He also teaches at a school for aspiring fighters, where he coaches them to become great like himself. According to Gris Bordeaux, success in wrestling comes not just from the physical side of things, but also from the mental preparation and dedication to the sport. He also stressed how important it is to have a good trainer with perfect combination of friendliness and discipline. Now, that said, who are some of the famous Senegalese wrestlers? So, Senegal's traditional wrestling has been a prominent spectator sport and cultural event in West Africa since about the 1950s. Uh, it's a cornerstone of Senegalese culture, and the country's wrestlers are some of the best in the world. The champions of these events are Senegal celebrities, such as Tyson Mohamed Nadal, Balagaya Tu, Omer Rugrug Kane, who we know from 1FC, Bombardier Sarine Ousmane Dia, and Yakini Yahya Diop, among others. I apologize if I really smashed those names, but I'm trying my best here. These fighters have become famous through Senegal for their ability to win matches against others with different styles. They also maintain an exciting fight that captivates audiences everywhere they go. Now, lately there's been a lot of press on Senegalese wrestling and MMA. So there's no doubt that there's a strong resemblance between Senegalese wrestling and MMA, as Senegalese wrestling matches are full of punching, throwing, and action, much like modern mixed martial arts. The main difference between Senegalese wrestling and MMA is that there are no submissions, no kicks, and no use of gloves, and no ring or cage that the fighters fight within. Another difference is the fact that the MMA matches forbid grabbing on the clothes, where Senegalese wrestling fully allows grabbing of the belt in order to control the opponent. In recent years, there's been a former Senegalese wrestling champion who made the crossover into modern MMA, that fighter being Omar Rugrug Kane. Now, Rugrug signed with one of the premier MMA organizations in the world, 1FC, which is a top level Asian facing mixed martial arts organization. Omar Kane has been a force to reckon with within the MMA ring and cage, having beaten some extremely tough MMA fighters already. And Omar Kane has amassed quite a good MMA record so far. He's got a bright future ahead of him. Rugrug has used a lot of the techniques of Senegalese wrestling to defeat his opponents and is quite a feared competitor in 1FC. We can definitely see and expect more Senegalese wrestlers to make the transition to MMA in the future, as they have the wrestling ability, the physical toughness, lack of fear, aggressiveness, and definitely have the strength to go far in mixed martial arts competition. Now, in closing, so what makes Senegalese wrestling so special? Well, it's a combination of many things. Firstly, it's a very physical and demanding sport that requires incredible strength, agility, and stamina. These guys are athletes. Secondly, the culture surrounding it is unique and provides a sense of identity for those who practice it. Finally, the competitions are highly entertaining and can draw an amazingly large crowd, up to 60,000 within Dakar. This traditional form of wrestling is a very important part of Senegalese culture, as well as global grappling culture in the world as well. It is often used to settle disputes and can be quite dangerous, as the wrestlers, especially when the wrestlers use all of their strength to win. The matches are usually quite short, lasting just a few minutes. This is because there's no real rounds. The match ends when one of the wrestlers has been forced to admit defeat or is unable to continue. All in all, whether you're a fan of wrestling or not, we're pretty sure that you'll appreciate the skill and athleticism on display at a Senegalese wrestling competition. Now, if you like this video, I invite you to subscribe or like this and follow Grappazilla. And guys, have a great day.